Looking to purchase an Audi TT Mk1 3.2 V6 in the near future, and you've got some questions about ownership? Wondering what to look out for when going to view a potential new car to you? I'm Andy, and this is my guide to owning and buying a VR6 Mk1 in 2023. I'm going to split this video into relevant sections, and I'm going to list those sections on screen now. So let's start with the VR6 Walkaround and vehicle background. We all know the iconic Audi TT shape, and if you are here, you are looking for that well sought after 3.2 VR6. But when Audi were looking for a normally aspirated engine to complement their turbo cars in 2003, they somehow shoehorned this rather impressive and well established VAG power plant into a rather cramped engine bay. The 3.2 engine was grown from an earlier 2.8 variant and carries much of this heritage into the higher performing unit that boasts 247 brake horsepower in the TT chassis. With the small size of the TT engine bay, there is not a lot of room to work under here, and space is at a premium. In fact, even the battery has moved to the boot on the 3.2 to save a little space, or perhaps aid with weight distribution, although the old battery tray and cover remain from the 1.8 turbo design. When the car was released, Audi produced this from the factory as both a manual and an automatic direct shift gearbox, or DSG for short. The car was available in both the hardtop coupe and soft-top roadster editions. When taking a look at the 3.2 from the outside, there are some subtle styling differences to the naked eye when comparing it to the Turbo brothers and sisters. Firstly are the bumper louvers on either side of the car, at the front just below the wheel arches. This gives the bumper a much more squared off look and a racier feel. The front bumper scoop and side vents are deeper and more pronounced. Out of the factory were these Ronal 7-spoke alloys, which measured the same dimensions as the 9 spokes more commonly found on the 225, but much easier to clean. It is my personal favourite of the TT wheels and only came on the 3.2, unlike the 9 spokes which came on both the 3.2 and 1.8 turbo cars. So if you want that original look, the 7-spoke Ronals are the standard. Moving to the back of the car, you will notice that the boot spoiler has grown an extension compared to the 150, 180 and 225 turbo models of the TT. I think it gives it a sportier look. The rear diffuser, the plastic part that sits between the twin exhausts, has also been swapped out from the turbo cars. Gone is the smooth colour coded part, and in comes this black plastic honeycomb panel. Other than that, there is very little to give away the VR6 from the outside, other than the boot badge of course. Stepping inside the cabin, and there is nothing here to differentiate from the 225. The interior comes in several different shades of heated leather seats, along with the occasional optional baseball stitch that you may see from time to time. The styling of the interior of any TT is timeless due to the exceptional design of Winfried Ruckheim, and complements the exterior design of Romulus Rost extremely well. Next up, let's take the 3.2 onto the open road to understand the driving experience. Of course, one of the big selling points for all the VR6 is its driving experience. Why don't we go for a little drive and I can tell you a little bit more. First thing we need to do is wind the windows down. Very important. And why am I doing that? Well, I think you know, the VR6 purrs. So let's hear what it sounds like from the cabin when we start it up. It sounds absolutely fantastic. You can never get bored of that sound, honestly, it is so amazing. The engine almost makes you want to drive around everywhere with the windows down, just so you can blip the throttle and make that sound amazing. Let's go for a drive. First thing to point out is possibly your cabin space. I'm only 5'10" and I just about fit in the cabin. I've got just about enough headroom for this car, but if I was any taller I would start to struggle. We'll put the windows down to pull away just so you can hear that roar of the V6. As mentioned, this car comes with both a DSG and a manual gearbox, and I have the DSG, which means I have the manual option of using the shifters, the paddle shifters that sit behind the steering wheel. So if I want to take control of the gear changes, I can. Seems to be quite responsive, pretty instant. So when I change gear, it's straight on there. I feel the standard comfort seats hold you really well, and they are shaped to you, and the fact that they are heated is an added bonus for the winter. The DSG gearbox, when you pull away, sometimes it does have a tendency to jerk. That does seem to be the typical behaviour of the DSG gearbox. However, it could be a possibility that your mechatronics unit is failing on your DSG gearbox, and that can be quite an expensive fix. There does tend to be a bit of a myth about the manual gearbox in the 3.2, that it is the rare manual gearbox. However, if you go and look on any of the reputable websites that tell you how many are left, you will find there is a pretty even number of manuals and automatics left here in the UK. Handling wise, well, the TT suspension is, well, let's say not the best, and the cars are 20 years old, so the chances are you may need to replace the suspension. There are a few aftermarket kits around. One of the kits is from Bilstein, seems to be quite a popular one, as the standard suspension is, well, pretty poor. For what I need from the car, it's fine, but if you're looking for a more sportier feel or some form of track ability, then you probably need to upgrade the suspension. Braking wise, I find the standard brakes are absolutely fine. I recently changed the brake pad to the brake disc on the 3.2, so if you want to check out a video on how to do that yourself, please do check out the link above. I actually changed the rear shocks on this car not so long ago, so if you want to check out a video on how to do so, click the link above. When you put the foot down, it just goes. And even on these twisty lanes, handling is great. So while we say the suspension is not the greatest, it can still hold the corners where you need it to. Now, like all TTs, the space in the back is going to be limited, so don't be expected to take any passengers in the back. Well, unless they've got no legs. It's just such fun to drive. I'm throwing this into these corners and the car just responds. I give it a bit of right foot and it goes. It really does fly on these country lanes. Really, we should put the windows down so we can have another listen to that VR6 roar. Let's go. Unbelievable. I have the luxury of comparing the 1.8 turbo, the 225 version, to the 3.2 V6. And if I was to compare them head to head, I would say the 3.2 VR6 is definitely a quicker car. Obviously there's no turbo lag, but the power is instant. Just puts a smile on your face. A great measuring stick for how good a car is how much you enjoy driving it. I've come out to do a quick 2 or 3 mile loop to make this video, and I've ended up going an extra 15 miles just because it's such great fun to drive. So would I buy a 3.2 VR6 tomorrow? You bet I would. Wow, that's definitely enough fun for one evening. I think we should get back to making this video. The whole Mk1 design is over 25 years old, and even many of the 3.2 cars are now approaching their 20th birthdays. Therefore, some of the bodywork and underside parts are starting to suffer with the dreaded rust. On the panels, the sills, side skirts and wheel arches seem to be the most common places to find rust, and finding good examples with immaculate ones is getting harder and harder. Bodywork aside, the various sensors around the car also seem to be starting to fail. On my car alone in the last 6 months, I have replaced the NOx sensor, crankshaft sensor, oil pressure sensor, and I need to also get one of the exhaust lambda sensors done also. One thing you can be sure of with a TT is it will keep you busy and keep your wallet empty. However, let's dive a little deeper on the 3.2 engine and its own issues. This particular variant of the engine does suffer from chain stretch. This is the part that keeps all the various other parts operating in the right sequence, so it's pretty important that it stays in time. The The tensioners that keep the chain taut are plastic and they can wear, and I've covered the causes and symptoms in more detail in my 3.2 deep dive video that I've linked above. I do recommend checking that out even if you already own one of these cars, as there is a lot of great info there for existing owners. You can check the chain stretch with a tool such as VCDS or various other OBD2 type error readers. Rule of thumb is chains, when you read blocks 208 and 209 with your OBD2 reader, should be between plus or minus 8, and the two readings should be within a tolerance of 2 of each other. More than that and you are likely to have chain stretch. You can also use your ears as well to listen for any potential problems. Engine marbling, like your engine has a bag of marbles rolling around under the casing, could be an indication there is some movement with worn tensioners. Again, this is an engine out job and part of the chain issue. Undertaking the replacement of chains is a pricey job and seems to affect many cars around the 100,000 mile mark. My chains are okay, and at the moment my car is at 115,000 miles. Look to pay north of £2,000 for chain replacement. The cost does not end there though. Also affecting the 3.2 autos are the DSG and mechatronic issues. The automatic gearbox can throw a hissy fit and stop working altogether. I have heard of difficulty to change gear, jumping straight into first at speed, and other odd and potentially dangerous behaviours from the DSG, but they do happen. Clutches also wear on the transmission and tend to be a gearbox out to change this, another big expense. Mechatronic fixes can be around the £2,000 mark, so it's often worth undertaking other big maintenance on the car at the same time, maybe a 2-for-1 deal with the chains. I would say these two main issues are why so many of the 3.2 cars are being broken for parts right now. So if you're off to view a 3.2 as a potential purchase, make sure it has all of the relevant stamps in the service book and a good back catalogue of receipts from previous owners. Not always a guarantee of a good car, but it does give you some indication of the life the car has led. These cars need lots of regularly intervalled oil changes, so at most for 1 year for engine and 3 years for gearbox, as this is where the wear and damage will cause you the most money. Seems obvious, I know, but I would always walk away from one that does not evidence this. If both of the above are serviced, also look for a regularly serviced Haldex unit as well. This is the 4-wheel drive controller and it too needs to be looked after. This applies to the 225 Quattro as well. Off to potentially view a new car? Well, your car viewing toolkit should include some form of VCDS, VAGCOM or OBD2 code reading tool. It should also have a torch so you can get a good look into the wheel arches. That way you can get a good understanding of the state of the underneath. You need some form of mat so you can lie on it so you can look underneath the car, and a cloth to get the oil cap on and off and give the dipstick a wipe. Usual things really, but you do need to check the condition of the oil. Most of all, use your eyes and ears. Tired looking or noisy cars are ones to be avoided. Some lack appeal is to be expected, the cars are 20 years old, but keep a close eye on the sills and the wheel arches as they are the areas that see the most rust as mentioned. Take it for a good test drive. It can take up to 20 minutes to get the oil up temperature, so ask the owner to run it up for you and then find some good roads and really open the car up. Make sure it pulls hard and consistently in every gear. No hesitations and the changes of gear are smooth. Look for any warning lights that may suddenly appear on the dashboard and may have been cleared prior to your arrival. Any that do reoccur, make sure you use your OBD2 reader to see what they are. So what has the car cost me in ownership? Well, I've owned the car now for 18 months and in that time I've replaced rear shocks, the knock, lambda, oil pressure sensor and crankshaft sensor, the fuel pump. It's had 2 engine oil changes, gearbox oil change and a new front subframe. Price wise in labour and parts, it's probably cost me around £2,000. There are still jobs to be done such as the top mounts and front shocks, so let's call it £1,250 a year for labour and parts, and I would class mine as a clean example. If you throw into that the MOT cost, tax and insurance, a typical TT Mk1 3.2 to keep it on the road, well, I would say around £2,000 a year. Talking of parts, did you know that many of the parts on the TT are now discontinued? So if you're having something fail, It's not always possible to replace it with a new genuine part, and sometimes you can't get the part at all. I found this out the hard way when I had to replace the front subframe. You simply cannot buy them new anymore, which is another reason why cars are being broken. The parts new are simply not out there. However, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We are blessed in the UK with some fabulous breakers that specialise in 3.2s and harvest these parts for reuse. I was able to keep my car going for this very reason. It gives you peace of mind that I can speak to one of these guys and they can normally help me out. So if you too are struggling for parts for your 3.2, why not drop me a line and I will happily put you in touch with them. What about purchase prices? Well, they seem to be a little all over the place right now. In recent time, the 3.2 price seems to have risen slightly and asking prices seem to start around the £4,000 mark, although you can find cheaper. Some sub 100,000 mile cars are asking strong money, and I've seen people asking £6,000 or £7,000 in adverts. Of course, what they're asking doesn't necessarily mean what they will get for the cars. As a comparison, I paid £2,650 for my car 18 months ago, and if I was looking to sell it today, I would possibly list this around the £4,500 mark. Yes, I did get it a little bit cheaper at the time, but prices have definitely strengthened. I put a lot of this down to a stronger second-hand car market in the UK right now, and cars becoming more scarce, if only slightly. So I hope that gives you a bit of an insight into looking to buy or experiences of owning a 3.2 V6 in 2023. If you like what you've seen today, then please do give this video a thumbs up, and also think about subscribing to my channel if you've not already done so, where you'll find a whole host of content on the Audi TT Mk1. As always, thanks for watching and see you soon. Take care.